Good God morning, and welcome back to the One God, One Thought Center Sunday lesson, sermon, and message. Welcome to our members, our family, our friends, those of you who are virtually watching us. We're just grateful that you've joined us once again. This is the month of May, the first Sunday in May. And you know, in the month of May, in the Universal Foundation for Better Living, we celebrate the spiritual power of power. And we celebrate using the color purple to remind us that we all have this spiritual power. We think about the disciple, Philip, that metaphysically represents horses and the power of horses to carry us forward. And so today we are celebrating our power, which is the ability, the God-given ability that we have to get things done. We are a member of the Universal Foundation for Better Living, which is an international association of New Thought Christian churches and study groups, founded by the Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman, and our current president is the Reverend Dr. Sheila McKeithen. My name is Bernette Jones, Senior Minister here at the One God, One Thought Center for Better Living. I've been away for a while, so I'm glad to be back. Looking forward to this message that Spirit is sending to us today. It's entitled, Sit on Your Hands. That's right. Sit on your hands. You know, several years ago at the One God, One Thought Center, our ministers and teachers together did a sacred ceremony. It was a healing service called the Blessing of the Hands. And at that time, we washed, we blessed, we anointed, and we affirmed that our hands are a gift from God to be used to do God's work in the world. And so this in some way is a follow-up to that. And it's also a follow-up from last Sunday's message about New Thought Christian spiritual leaders on the path. I'll invite you to go back to our website and check that message out. If it is of interest to you, how God and how the events of our time are catapulting us into leadership. But you know, this notion of sitting on your hands, in my mind, is another idea and aspect of what spiritual leadership requires in this day and time. My late husband, the Paul Kelly, who was one of the nation's great activists for many years in the area of advocating for recovery for people with addictions, and also an advocate for people who were living with HIV and AIDS. And as he moved in his growth and development and spiritual growth from pure activism of just reacting to spiritual activism, he would often say to me, you know, sometimes you just have to sit on your hands. And that is where this lesson title came from. The scripture that we're using today is one that we hear a lot in our seeking of truth. And it's from Psalms, the 46th chapter and the 10th verse. And it simply says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." Be still and know. Being still and knowing is a lesson about right reaction. It's one of the 5 righteous approaches to life that we espouse in the Universal Foundation for Better Living. Right thinking, right feeling, right words, right actions. And the one that we don't always give a lot of attention to is right reactions, and the importance and the significance and the power of how we respond appropriately in situations where we feel we're in a dilemma, situations where we feel that there is some required outcome that we've not yet experienced, situations that present a challenge for us. And we look at those situations and we sometimes have a very, what people refer to as knee-jerk reaction based on our emotional condition. And we simply act. We simply act. We know that activism in our culture right now is something that's emerging and bubbling up and bubbling over in many, many situations. But I say, and I would argue, that there is benefit to really being mindful about the way that we react and respond. Sit on your hands. You know, sit on your hands is really a metaphor for not taking an outer action or a manual action, a physical action, not taking an outer action in the time of a dilemma, when we're trying to respond to those situations. And I would say to not respond by sitting on your hands until you do 3 things. Doesn't mean that you won't take action. That's not what we're advocating. But it does mean that as a spirit-driven leader, you will do 3 things before you take action. And of course, the first thing is to simply pause, recognizing that I'm in a dilemma. I'm feeling something about what's going on. It doesn't feel like this is moving in the right direction. It doesn't feel like I'm going to have the outcome that I think. And rather than getting anxious and overwhelmed and anxiety driven and overcome with thoughts about, oh, this might not work out. Pausing. You know, I often say the power is in the pause. Simply pausing. And that means stopping the mental activity, stopping the physical action and activity, and going into a moment of being fully present in the silence. Because the silence is where our superconscious mind connects with the Christ mind. And it's the place where we simply have the light and presence of God as the source of all solutions and all answers and all outcomes, that infinite divine intelligence and consciousness is in that pause. The second thing, of course, is to listen. Not only go into the silence, but actually listen to what that still small voice of spirit is trying to say. What's the message that spirit is bringing to us for the particular situation that we're in? You know, when we talk about right reaction, we're not saying that there's a right or wrong. We're saying that there is a certain specific reaction that's appropriate for the particular situation we're dealing with. It may shift and change as the situation changes in terms of what is an appropriate reaction. But the one that comes through when we have listened intently to the message of spirit is the one that's right in that particular situation. And the third thing that it's important to do is the one that, for many of us, we don't practice it as often as we could, because it certainly brings us a right outcome. And that is to use our inner mental hands, to use our internal mental hands, our mind, to craft and shape the vision of the preferred outcome. To be intentional in bringing to our mind that vision of what we would like to see happen. What would it look like to you when the outcome is one that you would like to see happen? This is really the stuff of prayers. This is really the use of the mind to, as Johnny Coleman would say, take that cookie cutter and cut out of the substance of God the shape and form that you would like to see manifested. And when you ask yourself, what will this look like when I would consider it ideal or perfect? Now, that's not saying that that's God's vision of what's perfect, because until you can raise your consciousness to get a truly right interpretation of what is going on in the situation, at your level of consciousness, whatever it is, there is an outcome that will serve the highest good of everybody who's involved. The issue is sitting on your hands long enough for that to be revealed. You know, in the scriptures, in Genesis, the character Joseph is one that we refer to often because his story is so powerful. He was harassed by his brothers. He was sold into slavery. He was he had to sit on his hands for many years while he was in slavery. He had to pause and not try to seek revenge on his brothers and just do what it was that was in front of him to do. For many years, he sat on his hands. And because he was not trying to seek revenge, because he was allowing Spirit over that period of time to use and flow through him, he ended up in a position to actually help his brothers in the end. He ended up in a position where his gifts, his spiritual gifts of being able to rightly interpret the dreams, he ended up in a position where he could truly serve the kind of spiritual, godly outcome that he would not have been in a position to serve had he not sat on his hands for all those years. He was doing things all along, but he was sitting on his spiritual mental hands until the situation turned out. Think about Jesus. When he is about to be captured, and his disciples are there, and he is not wanting them to take up arms. He had to tell Peter to hold off and don't cut the soldier's ear off, although he took up his weapon, and then Jesus goes back and heals that ear. But he was telling Peter, you have to sit on your hands. This is not the reaction and the response that's appropriate in this situation, because there's a bigger interpretation of what's going on that you're not aware of. So sit on your hands. If you take out your sword and you start a battle here, there'll be bloodshed, and we'll be laying on the ground, dead, and which is not the outcome we're looking for. So sit on your hands and just hold still. Even in front of Pontius Pilate, Jesus sat on his hands. He didn't even respond with all the questioning and everything that was going on. He was cool and very, very peaceful and in his superconscious Christ mind during that whole time. He sat on his hands. He didn't allow it to just his mouth to run away with him. That happens so often when we just react with a knee-jerk reaction. Even in today's world, when you're on your cell phone and you're in meditation or prayer, you don't have to jump up and respond just because someone is trying to reach you. That's their agenda. Sit on your hands and continue in what you are focused on as your priority, because that is what is significant and important to you being able to fulfill what it is that your hands are intended to be doing in whatever the next situation is that comes up for you. When someone insults your wife or you in the middle of whatever is going on, if you feel disrespected, sit on your hands. Sit on your hands. You don't have to respond in a way and jump up and slap somebody. You have other options and choices that will be revealed to you when you sit on your hands and pause, when you take time to listen to spirit from within, and when you take time to visualize an outcome that would be to the benefit of everybody who's involved. Just sit on your hands. In this process, that of sitting on your hands, you'll be guided into what we call right action, which I say is appropriate action. And the response that you receive is going to be two things. You're listening for the response that's going to be effective and most impactful, not only for you, but as a spiritual leader for what you'd like to be leading people into. Because this is a teachable moment. This is a teachable moment when people witnessing whatever it is that's going on. It's like we're witnessing what the witnesses of Jesus said about what was going on. People are witnessing you and I. They want to see what kind of reaction, what kind of response, and they will learn about how to be best appropriate and impactful when they see you pause and listen and get that vision for something that is going to really make a difference in everybody's life, because that's the point. And the second thing is, in this process, you'll get an outcome that is strategic. And strategic in that it'll be clearly aligned. It will be clearly aligned with your highest intentions and the principles that your life is about. It'll be clearly aligned with your values. What is it that you hold sacred? And it's strategic in the sense that as long as we are operating from our values and from our principles, we can be certain. That's our spiritual certainty. We can be certain that the strategy we are given by God is going to be one that will produce an outcome that, again, serves the good of the whole. We can be certain everybody is going to be served in the right and perfect way. So this is my charge to us as we continue to explore and consider this path of spiritual leadership that we're being catapulted into during our times. Again, it really requires, and I said this last week and I'll continue to say it again, it requires that commitment to integrity. The commitment to the integrity of the principles that we say we are about. It's also the excellence, the commitment to excellence. Is this the highest and the best? Have I sought a right interpretation of what's really going on, or am I just knee-jerk reacting to what I think it is? And seeking that excellence, and then having the stamina to sit on our hands long enough to actually hear and see the answer. I know that you can do this. I know that I can do this. I know that we are capable and have the power, the spiritual power, to be leaders with that level of consciousness that is always, always in alignment with the Christ. I thank you for your consciousness. Thank you also for your gifts and intentional and conscious giving to the One God, One Thought Center for Better Living. You truly have demonstrated integrity, excellence, and stamina in your ongoing commitment. And so I know who you are, and I'm so grateful that we are here offering to you and to people in our community and our loved ones and friends a message of truth that will compel us to live as our highest self. That's what we're about, to be transformed and enlightened. Your gifts to this ministry make it possible for our ministers, our teachers, and our time tithers, and all of the people who are part of this ministry to continue in this way of serving. And it also is giving us the opportunity to now begin to grow beyond the walls and to serve our larger community, not only through our community partners, which is an extension of our arms and our hands, but to begin to develop the kind of programs that we can take to people in community in a way that will help them to live a better life, a way that will serve their soul growth and unfoldment. It's exciting. And it's upon us right now. So we thank you. And we bless your offerings, your tithes, knowing that divine love working through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And so it is. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever I am, God is. And wherever we are, God is. And so it is. Amen and amen. So I want to share with you a couple of very exciting things that we're doing coming up so that you can be with us and plan to join us, whether it's virtually or in person. Our Mother's Day tribute is going to begin with a virtual presentation of Hats Off to Moms by our Spiritual Arts Ministry. And that's going to be on May the 2nd on a Zoom call. And you will enjoy seeing all the moms and children and people who express the motherly consciousness, regardless of gender. And then on Mother's Day, we'll actually have an on-site Mother's Day service, and you'll also be able to see clips from the Spiritual Arts Ministry, Hats Off to Mom. You can find the information in our weekly e-blast or on our website at www.ogot.org. The second exciting thing that we're doing, we recently partnered with Baltimore County Health Department and our Optimal Health Ministry to begin to bring this new thought consciousness into the community through the relevant issue of tobacco cessation, meaning helping people to find the consciousness they need to stop or prevent smoking and vaping. And we're particularly interested in reaching our young people, people of all ages, truly. So we're inviting you to the next 3 presentations that our Optimal Health Ministry has put together. On Saturday, May the 7th, from 1 to 3 p.m., and this is a virtual presentation, interactive on Zoom. You can join in. And then on Wednesday, May the 11th, from 7 to 9 p.m., another virtual presentation. And then on Sunday, May 22nd, on Sunday, May 22nd, plan to join us on site for church service that day, because right after service, you'll be able to interact with our Optimal Health Ministry. You'll be able to see the presentation that they've developed, and you'll be able to see how we are taking on the strategy of bringing new thought consciousness into our community. That presentation after service is going to be from 12 to 2. We look forward to having you join us. You can find this information also in next week's e-blast, as well as on our website, www.ogot.org. We'd be so grateful to share all of this with you. God richly bless you.